everybody, welcome back. Or for those of you that are new, my name is Susan. I'm a freelance fiction editor specializing in sci-fi, fantasy, and romance. And this week we're going to be talking about book font. When putting the final touches on your story, most people focus on the font for the cover, which is really important. But for those of you that are like me that like to make sure every small detail is perfect, there is some consideration that can go into your internal book font as well. So for those of you that like to focus on those details, let's dive in and see what you should consider. Internal book font is one of those thankless details. It's something that most readers are not going to notice or even comment on unless it is a problem. So it's distracting or it's out of the norm. Think of if you picked up a book and the font was Comic Sans or some other sort of outrageous book font that is kind of made fun of in the writing and publishing world. It would be off-putting, right? I'll bet you probably wouldn't even want to buy that book, even if it was by an author that you liked. That's how much sort of subtle power book font can have. It's sort of like using the word said in dialogue. It's invisible until it isn't. So let's talk about what you should consider if you want to dive into that level of detail for your story. First and foremost, legibility. You want to make sure the book is able to be read easily. I feel like it's kind of a given, sort of like my joke about Comic Sans. So obviously you want to pick a font that is easy on the eyes, for lack of a better term, but you also want to take it one step further. So depending on the format that you're going to have your book in, whether it's mass market, trade paperback, hardcover, anything like that, as well as the length and the white space on the page, so empty space versus text space, you also want to pick a font that is going to make it easy and accessible to the reader. And I bring this up because there are a lot of books out there that when they go into multiple formats, they don't always translate the best. The best example I can give you is really big books like Way of Kings, Outlander. These are fabulous books, but obviously they came out originally, well, I don't know about maybe Outlander as far as originally, but they are now out in trade paperback, hardcover, everything like that. Well, when translating to mass market, this is a very long book that they had to condense, and they had to make the text super, super tiny because of binding constraints, right? So you are looking at this, and this is just like a wall of text, and it's very hard to read at times, and it can be overwhelming. Now, if you're a massive fantasy fan and you don't mind picking up a really big book with really tiny font, this isn't going to bother you. But for some readers, something like this, where it's just wall of text, or it's really small text, or it's text that's really hard to read, can make it feel overwhelming to the point where they may not take a chance on that book. So it is something to consider, not only obviously picking a sort of eye-friendly font, but also how that's going to turn out on the page, on the print page, depending on what size of book you're going to end up printing. The second consideration is the feel. Now, this, in my mind, is sort of like the coloration of a movie. For any of you that are massive nerds like I am, you'll know a number of years ago when they remastered the Buffy the Vampire Slayer series, they took out a lot of the blue tint in a lot of the shots. And it made the scenes, it made the episodes a lot brighter. And it took a lot of the overarching feel of sort of dark and gloomy and sort of gritty out of the story, out of the show. And fans went crazy because even something that subtle can have a huge effect on how you interact with that media. And same thing for font. It may not be something that the readers really consciously notice, at least at the time that they're reading it, but it is something that can add to the atmosphere and the feel. So if it's a romance novel, if it's a historical romance novel, if it's a, high epic fantasy, anything like that, how that font appears can add to that feel. When we get to my examples, I'll show you what I mean. Number 3, market. So, I preach about market. You should definitely know what's out there. So is there a norm? Is there something that is sort of usual? Is there a type of font, a spacing, a way something looks that might appeal to the readers that you are trying to catch for your story? Definitely something you want to keep in mind. Number 4 is personal preference. Like I said before, this is kind of a thankless detail. This isn't something that readers are probably going to notice or comment on unless it's really, really off or bad. So this is something that you want to make sure you're happy with, that you're excited with how it looks and you're pleased with the final product. All right, so let's get into some examples. Now, I'm going to apologize ahead of time. I really thought about how to do this the best way possible, and I wanted to take screenshots of the books online because that would be the most crisp and clear to show you what I mean. But of course, you can change the font online, which I love because it makes it infinitely more accessible for people that may not be able to read certain fonts or have issues or anything like that. But it makes it really hard to talk to you about the specific font of books as far as style and genre and everything like that goes, as far as what the publisher or author decided on. So I did this in a very low-tech way, and I took pictures of the books that are on my shelf. So I encourage you to pull some books off of your shelves to sort of go along with this as well, to see what I mean, especially because it's infinitely easier to see when it's in person versus on the screen. But we're gonna run with this because I think you'll be able to see exactly what I mean, even with my very, very shady looking photos. All right, so example number 1. Take a look at these 3 photos. Now, these 3 photos are pictures of books that are on my shelf, and one is a contemporary romance, one is a paranormal romance, and one is a historical romance. Can you tell which is which? Because I will bet you dollars to dollars you have absolutely no problem telling which is which. These are all romance. They're all targeting the same people. I clearly have read all of them, right? But there is a difference in the font because of the feel they wanted to give the readers, because of what they wanted to add to the story, even with just the font, not necessarily anything specifically for the story. This is the best example I can give for why you might want to consider this for feel as well as for market. You can tell what they were doing here. It's a very stark difference. So to give you, and to just confirm for you, these are the 3 books that I took pictures of. So Julia Quinn, Bridgerton, obviously. Nalini Singh, if you haven't read her, paranormal romance, phenomenal. And then Jill Shalvis, contemporary romance, very, very popular. Hopefully you recognize some, if not all of those names, but as you can see, the font's very, very different, even though a lot of those markets overlap. So it gives a lot of feel to the story. Now here is my second example. This one is a bit more subtle, a bit more tricky. Of these 3 examples, which book is YA? Now, no cheating by reading the text. Obviously, you can read and probably figure it out, but just looking at the font, can you tell which book is targeted towards young adults versus adults? Even though it's more subtle than the first, I'll bet you still can. If you guess the one on the right, you're right, not my right. You're correct. This is a page from Vampire Academy. Actually, this is a page from my old version of Vampire Academy. Here, this one. I obviously don't know exactly what font type they use, but you can tell it's a bit of a bigger type. It's a bit more bubbly. It's spaced out. It's it's still a serif font, but you can kind of see how it feels very different from the other 2, which are The City of Brass and In the Shadows of Lightning by Brian McClellan. But it's interesting to see. Not only can you tell YA, but you can see very clearly between these 3 fantasy books, which arguably Vampire Academy is more paranormal than fantasy, but we're going with what I had on my shelf. You can see there's a difference. There's a huge difference in the text, in the feel, even between The City of Brass and the In the Shadow of Lightning. You can tell there's a difference in the style of the font that they used because of the feel of the book. Now, like I said before, you can pick a very neutral font and just have the readers focus on your words, exactly what you're giving them for the story, and that's perfectly fine. But there is some benefit to taking it one step deeper and giving that feel and targeting that market through the type of font that you use for your story. Not only the text look, the chapter openers, the white space, everything like that. It really just gives the story a more rounded feel, an overall atmosphere to bring the readers even further into your tale. So with all that being said, I encourage you, take a look at some of the books on your shelf, especially your comps, your comparable titles. Do you see a pattern? Is there a specific font that you like more than others? Is there something that you never noticed before that you really like that stories do, whether it's a stylistic choice, a font choice, anything like that? And consider whether that's something that you want to dive into as you start planning how the inside of your book is going to look. book. Hopefully this has been helpful. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. Don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps the channel. And until next week, keep writing.